To recap, Dad and I just changed the trunk weather seal and the exhaust manifold collector gasket, and when I tried to repark it, the engine wouldn't idle and it hardly ran at all, even giving it gas. And I had to limp it back up the driveway into its parking spot. I was tired enough after all the trunk seal work that we did that weekend, so I decided not to try to fix it that same late winter afternoon. But eventually I asked my dad over the phone if he had any ideas as to why it'd be acting up like that. And he asked if we ever reconnected the PCV hose after everything. And, well... Alright, well, after talking to my dad, he instantly diagnosed what the problem is. And I'm sure you can also see what the problem is too if you know your thing or two about these cars. PCV hose. And just like that, she's fixed. So with that simple fix completed, let's move on to the real goal of this session, which is replacing the gross original carpet and making the battery tray look good again in the meantime before we eventually relocate it into the trunk for better weight distribution. First thing we did for replacing the carpet was we started undoing all the interior screws and also removing both of the bench seats. We were even lucky enough to find the original build sheet, which was super cool. The previous owner had come up with this cardboard and duct tape situation that was hidden under the back seat blanket that came with the car, and the foam stuff under the cardboard was really gross. It was as if you just looked at it, it would turn into dust that you would breathe on accident. In this video, we are not reupholstering anything, unfortunately, but I do have some cheap ideas to making the seats look much nicer to live with. With the seat out, I was also excited to do some more deep cleaning to get more of that old nasty car smell out, so this metal that is under the seat was thoroughly cleaned. Also, with the seats out, we can see really well just how gross the carpet was. My dad mentioned this carpet was still in way better condition than the majority of early darts still out there in the world. Whether it was good carpet in comparison to others or not, it was far from good enough for me. With the carpets finally removed, we saw the actual condition of the floor and it was not as good as I had hoped. The passenger side was very flaky, but was still solid and not rusted through, which was great. But the driver's side, well, it had a rust hole that we found. Actually, several rust holes that we found. As I was scraping and sweeping up the rust flakes, we kept finding more holes in the metal, which was a bummer because the area that needed to be repaired kept getting bigger and bigger. I am not at all used to rust holes, as the 90s Japanese cars that I'm used to playing around with have good rust protection. At least out here in the unsalted roads of the West Coast they do. But my dad seemed unfazed by all this, so I just trusted his confidence. We drove the car up on the stands to get better access to the bottom side of the car. Then I used cardboard to create a shaped template of the metal piece we needed to patch it up. The metal patch piece was actually a big flat chunk from Steven's dad's old Tahoe that we actually did a video on replacing like 10 years ago. Before we scrapped the dented original rear door hatch of the Tahoe, I had cut this big flat section out of it as I had a feeling I would someday need a free big patch panel piece of metal. Unluckily for me, someone at my parents' house had used it for target practice, as you can see by the red spray painted target symbols and bullet holes. We chiseled off the Tahoe badge and we also noticed that this piece of metal seemed to be aluminum, which I was very surprised by. At least this piece wouldn't rust again in the future. We sanded off most of the paint and then I hammered the bullet holes flat, then placed the template on it to get it ready to cut more down to the right shape. With the panel cut to the right general size, it was time to start hitting it and trying to shape it to match the Dart floor plan. This isn't really the right way to do this, and the aluminum made it harder to get it to bend and stay in the shape that I wanted it to, but we made it work well enough. With that ready, it was time to finish getting the rust flakes out with the sanding disc and then get it ready to paint on the rust converter stuff so that we could stop the rust from continuing or spreading. Luckily for me, my dad was cool enough to take on that project, which freed me up to work on the ruined back bench seat. First off, I cleaned it up real nice, and then I duct taped the living crap out of it to give it strength and also lock in that disintegrating foam stuff as well. For the seat bottom, I wanted to expand upon my duct tape idea that I had tested on the passenger front seat bottom, and also stepped it up a notch to make sure it would be durable enough to last for a good while. So, while I was playing with the tape in both of the bench seats, Dad was working on that rusty floor like I mentioned. Man, look at all that rust dust billowing out of there. This is why you wear a mask and glasses, kids. With the rust flakes out, my dad painted on the rust converter and we let that dry overnight. And the next day it was time to install the patch panel. First, Dad used silicone sealant to fill the rust holes that were all over the place. Then we used a ton more silicone sealer to kind of glue down the panel. Then we also screwed the panel to the metal all over the place as well, so it was both glued and bolted into place. Then I added some sound deadening sheet to also help seal it more and give it more of a smooth feel, so it would hopefully be unnoticeable under the carpet when you feel the floor with your feet. With that surprise day of work spent on the rust hole patches, we could finally get back to the original goal, which was to install the brand new reproduction carpet. Classic Industries, the website I bought the carpet from, didn't seem to have the tannish carpet, and black was too boring for me, so I decided to go with the gold, which also matches the sun visors I already installed. We reinstalled the back seat's seat back, and also added a new brown blanket to cover up all the duct tape now holding the back seat together. We had to poke all the screw holes and seatbelt bolt holes and whatnot to get the carpet installed, which of course took patience and time as well. But the end result was turning out really nice. The gold carpet and brown seat blanket gave the car a clean and much less smelly vibe, which made me super happy after all that work we had put into it this weekend. The last thing for this leg of the interior restoration project was to clean up the floor mats and make them look better as well. They looked horrible. I bought a can of vinyl and fabric spray paint and painted the floor mats goldish as well, which actually turned out really fairly well for only $10. With the floor mats and new carpet and blankets installed, the interior was so much nicer. It smelled pretty good. Unfortunately, the headliner is still awful and the seats do need a real reupholster job eventually, but for now, the time and money we had put into it, I was really happy with the results we achieved. Last thing for this round of the Dart Daily Driver project was to take apart and deep clean and rust proof the battery tray. While yes, we are eventually relocating it to the trunk to improve traction and handling, in the meantime I wanted to make sure the battery area looked much nicer. I unbolted the assembly completely and threw all the parts into a vinegar bath for days on end, letting the rust get eaten completely. This process involved agitating everything once a day with a screwdriver, and also every couple of days filtering out the big rust chunks with this contraption I rigged up with a funnel and a rag as a filter. With the battery tray removed, I deep cleaned the engine bay and repainted it with that beige paint I used to touch up the trunk with before. It matched well enough, but most importantly, we had a layer of protection from more rust developing. Eventually, with the rust removed from the hardware, I bought 2 new bolts and washers to replace the 2 bolts which had been eaten up too much by the rust. I cleaned everything up super clean and repainted everything a few coats of flat black to seal it all back up and help keep the rust at bay. With everything reinstalled, the engine bay was looking much nicer, and I felt great knowing that more rust had been prevented from causing more damage. So now we have an interior looking, smelling, and feeling way better than before. An exhaust leak fix so the exhaust smell also stays out of the interior, and a trunk seal to keep the rain out. We even of course have a gas tank that doesn't leak gas, and while the speedometer doesn't work, the odometer does keep track of the distance so we can start collecting fuel economy data. And that also means I have to start driving it to work every day so we can get that data and figure out exactly what the fuel economy is. That sets us up nicely for the next time when we finally start racking up miles and figure out what the next step in the Dart adventure is to get it more suited to daily driving, and also improving the handling, so until then, we'll see you in the next one. Okay, you ready?